Dylan, Burger, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you? I hate this so much. Madison, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I'm not one for New Year's resolutions.
Neither am I.
I don't like the idea of waiting until a new year or a new month, or like having to wait until the beginning of something to like start something new.
Yeah.
I like the idea of just being able to like set goals and like, which people might think of as resolutions, but I don't, because usually resolutions are like, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna check this off my to-do list and I'm gonna make this new habit. And like, why start to the new year to do that? You can make a new change. You can make a change anytime.
If you want to make a change in your life, do it today.
That's the best time to do it.
Don't wait for some arbitrary date.
I agree. I never liked that idea. So
yeah, neither have I. Find the resolve within yourself before the new year.
Exactly.
Because a new year only comes around, what?
Once every 365 days.
Exactly.
Why wait 365 days when you can just start today?
You can make 365 changes in your life for the better in a single year instead of waiting for the next year.
So eloquently put.
Thank you.
So eloquently put.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I don't know if I have, so my goals, I'll talk about my goals, I guess.
Talk about your goals.
Balance.
Balance
Is my word for the
you have
year.
inner ear problems or?
I have a lot of problems. That's not one of them.
Famously bronchy.
Yeah. Famously bronchy. Bronchy, honky, tonky, squonky.
Holy shit. Do you want me to lay down a beat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, just like steadiness, equilibrium, balance.
I'm noticing a theme.
Yeah, I hope so. They're all synonyms. I always do a lot and I always do too much. And so I'm trying to do one thing at a time instead of lots and lots at a time. And I had a lovely year this last year. It was great.
Yes.
No complaints. It was a lot of growth.
Many incredible milestones.
Yeah, lots of milestones, lots of growth, lots of ups and downs and everything that is life. But I just want to do a little less, I think, and still do what I love, but just like take time to enjoy those things.
Absolutely. When you do a little less, you have more time to focus on the things that you're doing more.
Exactly. I don't want to be doing something that I love and not loving it because I'm doing so many things and I can't focus on that.
Oh, that's very wise.
So yeah, that's my goal.
Very nice.
Yeah. What about you, Dylan? Any resolution? No.
Well,
goals?
I have my one word of the year.
Yes.
Which is will.
Will.
Power.
A man named Will.
Willpower, not willpower. Not willpower.
Willpower.
Willpower. The
Will.
power of will.
The power
Saying
of will.
I will do that.
Okay. Oh, I see. Willpower.
Yes.
Willpower. I love that.
Yes. Will in caps, power in undercase.
I love that so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. What are you trying to will?
No. I haven't thought of anything yet. I'm pretty happy where I am at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe I can focusing more on the gym.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to break some personal records.
Okay.
I want to maybe start running.
Okay. Remember whenever I said that I was going to start running?
Yeah, I remember very
and
well.
I tried.
You fell off the treadmill, right?
No, I didn't. I just had to bring my inhaler lots.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't breathe. So,
oh, God. It's probably best for not only you, but the people around you at the gym.
Honestly, yeah, I probably shouldn't try to do any of that while I'm in this condition.
Yeah, doctors usually don't recommend not doing cardio, but for you, they make an exception.
Yes, exactly. They're like, please don't. Please do not.
It's just really disturbing to the people.
It is.
But yeah, I am very much looking at 2025. Looking forward to 2025, rather. Just going full tilt into this podcast and having a great time doing it.
Yay!
Yeah.
I love that so much.
100%.
Will do.
I'm saying I will do things, and I will do them. And that's the power of will.
Power.
Think about it. Actually, think about it. Yeah, think about it.
Think about it for a little bit.
Now, Madison, what are we listening to right now? What is this podcast?
That's a great question. I don't know.
This is
My
Existential Crisis,
the
podcast where we talk about everything that makes us question our entire sense of self.
I thought we were getting like deep and like what is this? What is I was like, what is this?
What is this room?
Well, after the last episode, I'm just like, what is this? I don't know.
Yeah, we spoke. By the way, my name is Dylan.
Oh, I'm Madison.
And last episode, we talked about the possibility of the multiverse as suggested by Hartmut Nevin, the lead and founder of Google's quantum AI, who recently created a quantum chip.
And Scott Bakula, who is famously known for his hit TV show Quantum Leap, which is 100% rooted in science.
That is 100% right.
Yes. Actually, I think Nebula, what's his name? Nevitz?
Nevin.
Mm-hmm. Nevin actually based his work off of the profound impact of Quantum Leap.
Can we say that? Are we allowed to say that?
I would.
Okay.
I would say that.
Okay.
I base my work off of the incredible impact of Quantum Leap.
You have talked more about this show in the past, like 2 or 3 episodes that I've ever heard you talk about it in our entire knowing each other.
Great show. I used to watch it with my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you picked it up again recently?
No.
Do you intend to?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great show. I remember my dad would just be like, he'd be going to fall asleep. He'd be like, hey, kid, you ever seen this show? And I was like, no. And he's like, we're going to watch it. And then he'd fall asleep. And then I'd be stuck watching it. But it was actually a good show.
Nice. I've been getting very much into Gilmore Girls recently.
Really?
I watched it a lot back in college, and I enjoyed it and never finished it. And recently, I've just been getting back into it again. It's such a cozy show.
Everyone says that. I've never gotten into it.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you tried?
I tried watching the first episode, and I was like, meh. Not for me.
It gets better.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say the first 1 through 4 seasons are probably the best. That's when I stopped. So I don't know if seasons 5 through 7 are better.
Oh, there's 7 seasons?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Well, 7 seasons and a limited series put on by Netflix called A Year in the Life.
That's right, because it was like a flash forward type
yes.
thing. Okay. I know that much at least.
Mm-hmm.
I know Stars Hollow.
Yeah.
I only know that because our coworker has a shirt that says Stars Hollow.
Which coworker is that?
Mandy.
Oh, she does.
And I think there was a gazebo on it.
Oh, there's a gazebo.
She's a big Gilmore Girls fan.
Oh, I'll have to talk to her about that.
Yeah, she'll love that.
Yeah. So, what do you have for us today?
I have got a doozy of a case, and it's one I wanted to cover for a while, and I haven't because it's a doozy of a case. But then our good friend Susan emailed
the patron saint of this podcast.
Really she is. And she gave me some suggestions on other cases to do, and this was one of them. And I said, what's a better time like the present? Am I right?
If there's a weird case, you better make sure you're cruising for a Susan.
I hate it. I hate it here. Give me another dimension to jump into. So yeah, this is the murder of Robert Eric Wone.
Okay.
My sources are Wikipedia, Newsweek, the website Who Murdered Robert Wone.
Oh, very on the nose.
Yes. All That's Interesting, and DC CityCast.
Cool.
All right. Also the docuseries on Peacock, Who Killed Robert Wone. Watched it last night. It's great. I am just telling you off the bat, there's no way in hell I can cover every little minute detail that was in that TV series, even though I would love to, because there is just so much.
Now, right away, I'm not liking this guy who.
You're not liking this guy who?
Yeah, he killed Robert Wone.
Ending it. I'm ending the podcast. We're done.
Hey, we made it to 49 episodes, folks.
Yeah, bye, guys. Oh, shit.
Keep knocking shit over.
No, it's fine. It's just my music. So yeah, it's very convoluted, confusing, dizzying, mystery of a case.
Okay.
And the timeline is 79 minutes.
Timeline is 79 minutes from start to finish.
Of the crime is 79 minutes.
From toe to tip.
But first, who was Robert Eric Wone?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, let's just get to know him a little bit.
Who was this man?
Who was he? He was A fourth-generation Chinese-American-born man.
Okay.
Born in Manhattan, raised in Brooklyn. He graduated from William & Mary in 1996 and then received his doctorate in law with honors from the University of Penn. Just to show you what a stand-up guy this guy really was, at William & Mary, he was part of a secret club called the 13 Club. And the whole purpose was to take part in random acts of kindness for people.
Wow, that's actually kind of sweet.
Right? Yeah. He worked in commercial real estate law for 6 years in D.C., and as part of his public service duties with the firm, he served as a general counsel for the Organization of Chinese Americans. He was very into working with the Asian American community, did a lot for them. He married his wife, Catherine Ellen Yu, another attorney, in 2003, and the two lived in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes away from D.C.
I've seen the word Fairfax County, Virginia quite a lot. Of all the places in Virginia, that one seems to come up.
It's like a suburb of D.C. It's close to like the capital.
Oh, that makes sense.
So there's a lot of like business going on there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. He ended up leaving his D.C. law firm to work as a general counsel for a D.C. nonprofit called Radio Free Asia. Again, very active in the Asian American community. He also supported the Museum of Chinese in America and was president-elect of the Asian Pacific American Bar Association. Crazy, just a really good guy, super smart, loved by all, not one to have any enemies, and quite the opposite. Everyone loved him. He was described by his loved ones as thoughtful, reliable, and genuine, the kind of person who kept a spreadsheet of all of his friends' birthdays and put change into expired parking meters when he walked past them. His friend Tara...
Is that real? Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like a genuinely good guy. His ambition, the reason he went into law was to like advocate for change and like do good things. And I would say he did that with the short time that we had with him.
Incredible.
On this earth. Just one more good thing. His friend Tara Ragone from college said he never looked for recognition. He was always the man behind the curtain making magic. And he also had a silly side. In the summer of 2006, Wone started commuting into D.C. for his new job at Radio Free Asia. This long commute was what led him to spend a night with his friend at 1509 Swan Street on that fateful night of August 2nd, 2006. So Joseph Price, he was a friend from college of Robert's. He also went to William & Mary, was also in that 13 Club.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Price, his husband, Victor Zaborski, and their boyfriend, Dylan Ward, lived together in a row house on Swan Street in Washington, D.C. The three men were in a polyamorous relationship, often referring to themselves as a family.
Okay.
So Joseph and Victor were married. Dylan was the third wheel.
Okay.
He was the newbie to the family. Joseph Price acted as a mentor to Robert when in college, as Robert was a freshman when Joseph was a senior. Robert was super accepting of his relationship and had hung out with Joseph, Victor, and Dylan before. The Thrupples' house was just a mile from Wone's office in D.C., so when work ran late on August 2nd, Wone had planned to crash at his friend's house rather than make the commute back to Oakton, Virginia, and disturb his wife so late. He arrived at the house around 10:30 p.m., but after that, the events followed are a bit muddled. Here are the events, the best as we know them, based on Victor, Joseph, and Dylan's testimony.
Okay, and this takes place over 79 minutes.
Starting 10:30 right now.
Okay.
So, Wone arrived at the house. Victor and Dylan said they had stayed upstairs since it was late. Joseph, being his oldest friend, welcomed Robert, offered him a glass of water. They stood talking chit-chat around the sink for a few minutes. Joseph ended up going outside for something, and so Victor showed Robert to the guest bedroom on the second floor. Robert said he wanted to shower right away because it was August, it's humid, it's muggy, it's DC, and he was sweaty. So then Victor went to bed. He said he watched Project Runway, which ended at 11. Joseph saw the last few minutes of the show whenever he eventually made his way up to bed. Victor went up to brush his teeth. Joe turned off the TV, and they went to sleep. Sometime between 11 and 11:30, after Project Runway had ended and they had reportedly gone to sleep. A neighbor reportedly heard a scream coming from the home, which was later determined to be Victor Zaborsky.
Okay.
At 11:49 p.m., a frantic Victor Zaborsky called 911 and told the operator that someone in the house had been stabbed. Quote, "We need an ambulance. We had somebody in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody." On the call, Victor was hysterical, sobbing. There was panic, which is what you would expect to hear from a 911 call. Paramedics and the police arrived 5 minutes later at 11:54 p.m. to find Robert Wone unresponsive, lying on a pull-out couch in the guest bedroom with 3 stab wounds in his chest and abdomen. 79 minutes. That's all this took. Joseph Price called Robert's wife, and Wone was pronounced dead at George Washington University Hospital at 12:24 a.m. on August 3rd. All 3 men attended his funeral, where Joseph Price served as a pallbearer. Everyone was heartbroken, describing him as gentle and kind. He was killed in the most horrible of ways. So I'm just going to stop there for a second. What are your initial thoughts with that timeline?
It all seems a little quick.
Yeah.
Somebody in the house did it. Yeah. The fact that he didn't have any wounds on his back is curious, because you think that if someone's stabbing you, you're probably going to run away.
Yeah. We'll get to that, because that's a very important point. No, he was laying on his back, and it was just in his chest.
Okay. So that makes me think that the person who did it is probably somebody that he knew.
Okay.
Maybe he was trying to reason with them?
Maybe, but it gets more bizarre than that.
Okay. I gotta stop doing that. Okay.
That's all right. So I'll go into the investigation a little bit, because this is kind of where we get some more information and things just kind of get crazy. Paramedics who responded to the 911 call found the 3 residents' calm behavior unusual. None were screaming or even helping direct the paramedics, which was a stark contrast to the call with 911 operators just minutes before.
Mm-hmm.
Victor looked freshly showered and was standing in a white robe as the paramedics arrived. He was on the phone, directing them into the house. The paramedic said that he wouldn't look at him. He was just staring at the floor and said, "Stabbing on second floor," and kept his eyes on the ground. The paramedic went upstairs to the second floor, and he saw a second man, Dylan, who was in a white towel.
I remember it well, yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Uh-huh.
Also looking freshly showered. They locked eyes.
They both showered?
That's what it looked like. They locked eyes, but Dylan just silently didn't say anything and walked to the bedroom and closed his door. The paramedics then noticed a third man, Joseph Price, wearing boxer briefs, also looking recently showered, and said he heard a scream. The 3 men claimed that an intruder had broken into the house and killed Wone, and insisted that they saw nothing about the attack. The police immediately began to suspect that they had something to do with Wone's death, or at least know who did. Dylan Ward's attorney claimed that the detectives who interrogated the 3 men told them that they were the main suspects immediately and asked many sexually charged accusatory questions. We'll get into this later because it's not entirely wrong. Strangely, Robert Wone had no defensive wounds on his hands or his arms. It was clear that he did not resist while being stabbed 3 times, indicating that he was most likely unconscious while he was attacked.
Or someone was holding his arms.
But there were no ligature marks.
Or a man was holding his arms.
There would have been bruising. I mean, if you're fighting back.
And if you hold someone by their elbows and their arms behind their back, it wouldn't show anything, right?
It would usually show. With the force of... Oh. Imagine you fighting for your life.
I do every day.
Yeah. Imagine you fighting for your life.
Okay.
And someone's trying to hold you back and your arms back.
Uh-huh. I would do a big flip.
You'd think...
Over top of them, and I would kick them.
You see? That also doesn't...
I do a spin attack.
Spin attack?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, though, because there were stab marks on the chest.
Yes.
And there was no disturbance in the bedroom. We'll get into this more. Let me set the scene a little bit more. Even more odd, the first EMT on the scene said that he felt something was immediately off because Wone's torso had no blood on it.
What?
There was very little blood on Robert or around the scene. The EMT said it looked like Robert was stabbed, showered, and placed in the bed. The EMT also noticed that these stab wounds were like surgical incisions, like what a doctor would do. It looked like he had been wiped down with a towel as well, as to like where there's no blood. In the ambulance, there was no heart activity. He had already bled out. Yet there was very little blood at the scene. Only 2 very small stains, if you want to call them that, on the bed sheet. And on a white towel, there were like smears of red. The bed sheet, yeah, that's stained. But the towels, you could absolutely get that out. Like, there was hardly anything.
Okay.
The knife itself also had very little blood on it, which an officer noticed came from the knife set downstairs in the kitchen. All of the EMTs and homicide detectives immediately said that they had their hair standing on end because whenever they came to talk to the men after the EMTs took Robert away, the men were all in stark, white, pressed terry cloth robes looking freshly showered.
They all did it.
The trio claimed that they heard a person heading down the stairs of their home when they went to investigate a series of grunts coming from the guest bedroom. They claimed that an intruder must have entered their home from the townhouse's back door, which had been left opened and could be reached if they jumped over the fence. They said that they had not heard anyone coming up the stairs of their home, nor could they explain why the alleged killer chose to go up the stairs, past Dylan Ward's room, and enter the guest bedroom across the hall, a complete 180. Police also noted that Joe was the one in charge, the only one talking. The lead detective noticed that Joe gave Dylan a look when he tried to talk. In the guest bedroom, Robert's clothes were neatly folded with his wallet, BlackBerry, and very nice watch on the table at the foot of the bed. Undisturbed, completely, perfectly placed. The bed comforter even had a perfect crease in it. Like, I'll get there.
Like a hospital corner kind of thing?
Yeah, like it was a made bed. It was pulled back, like you're getting into bed, and like pulled back. But the corner was just like still had the hospital, like it had the folded creases in it, like you just made the bed. There was no struggle, no nothing. There was The pillow at the head of the bed had a perfect head indentation. Like not like it all fluffed up, like perfectly head. Nothing was out of the ordinary that it would insinuate a murder took place there, let alone a stabbing.
Okay.
Just for reference, the homicide detectives have seen crime scenes before with a single stab wound that would look like a slaughterhouse. So for 3 stab wounds, no defensive wounds, and for Robert to have bled out, where was the blood?
Yeah, because when he stabs somebody, it's just like you have to wait for them to lose blood pressure, and that's how they die. They don't die because you just stab them.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's like they hit an organ.
Exactly.
I said Oregon.
Oregon.
Oregon has nothing to do with this.
Unless it had an organ. I fixed it for you. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. And I only know that because I also listen to a lot of true crime podcasts that go into this.
Yeah, it takes a while to bleed to death.
Yeah, you have to lose blood pressure. And if he died from blood loss, like where's the blood? He was in the shower. He must have been in the shower.
That's what you'd think.
That's what I think.
That's what I would think.
That's what we think.
So initially, Price, Zaborski, and Ward all spoke to the police without attorneys. It was here that they learned about the trio's relationship. Again, Joseph and Victor were married. Dylan was the newcomer, the third wheel.
Ain't that the truth?
And I will say that, you know, there was talk in the documentary about homophobia and prejudice in the police scrutiny. They talked about tunnel vision, never considering any other opinion besides them. Mm-hmm. Other people argued, like, no, they're just doing their jobs. Their job is to get them riled up and, you know, trying to get anything they can out of them.
Sure.
I think both can coexist. I think that if we're looking at the time, I mean, DC is it's a more liberal place, I would say.
I would say so, yeah.
But still for the time, 2006, gay marriage isn't legal. There's still a lot of strides to go in that area. And especially if you have a threesome, that's a bit out of the box in terms of like the norm.
Sure.
So just something to keep in mind. I don't know, who is right. It sounded pretty homophobic in like the interviews that I was watching. But I think both can also coexist.
Mm-hmm.
So Joseph said that Robert had never stayed the night at his house on Swan Street before, that this was the first time. And police questioned this. Why was this the first time Robert had stayed there? Was it because of the polyamorous relationship? Was there something to it that they were trying out? I think one of the cops even said, were you all just like drinking some wine and seeing where things would go? They could not understand why a straight man would go to his gay friend's house. They said that multiple times, like, there's 3 gay men and a straight man. What is he doing there?
This is in 2006?
2006.
In D.C.
In D.C.
Which is more liberal.
Yes. And that's why I'm bringing this aspect up, because it is pertinent to the case.
Okay.
And the tunnel vision of these 3 men.
Yeah.
But this was also very normal for Robert. He and his wife had the same commute every morning. They went to the metro together. They would kiss goodbye at 8:45 a.m. Robert had known he was going to be working late that day, and he had even called another friend about staying the night with her, but Joseph was the first to get back to him, so he stayed with him instead. For all the salacious speculation that the police tried to create, it wasn't anything like that, and I do want to clarify that because that was my first thought. I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
But no, just normal thing. Good friends with them. Joseph said that he woke up to a chime from the downstairs door, and then he said that he heard these low grunts that was almost like a scream, but wasn't. Victor was then woken up by Joe and followed him to Robert's room where they heard the grunting coming from. Joseph said that he saw Robert with a lot of blood on his chest and the knife laying on his chest. He said he picked up the knife and moved it to the bedside table, and that's when Victor became hysterical and he told him to call 911. Dylan said that he heard some type of noise and the scream from Victor, which is what woke him up.
Uh-huh.
He went downstairs and said that he assumed it was a burglar or someone who had entered the house. Joseph said that when he went downstairs, the back door was open, but when the detectives went to look, it was just a tiny backyard with a 7-foot security fence. Yes, somebody could have jumped over it, but much like the JonBenet Ramsey case, the cobwebs were not disturbed, pollen, dirt wasn't disturbed, nothing was. There was no evidence from what the police said of anyone jumping over the fence or getting into the home. Usually when there's a disturbance, something is knocked over or disturbed, but nothing was.
Right.
And then the time frame. We're talking 79 minutes from start to finished, and nothing was out of place in the house. The house was impeccable. Nothing was stolen. No one else was harmed. It was just Robert. And I also want to mention that this house is old. It's in the heart of Washington, D.C. It's 100 years old. The stairs were creaky. You could not walk up those steps without creaking on every single one. There is no way that you can walk up the steps and not be heard.
I could do it.
You could. I bet you could. Yet, nobody heard anybody coming up or down the stairs. Also, if you're coming in to rob somebody, I would hope that you would bring your own weapon. I mean, I don't hope you're coming in to rob somebody, but
you heard it here, folks. Madison hopes that you get robbed.
I would hope
and stabbed.
That the robber is prepared. Or if someone's trying to kill you, wouldn't they bring something with them to kill you?
What would they bring?
Their own.
What would you bring when you go to rob and kill people?
Their own knife, a gun.
What's your preferred weapon?
My bare hands.
That's terrifying.
But no, they used the weapon that was a knife taken from the butcher block in the home. Joe could not back up Dylan's alibi, but he was adamant that Dylan did not do it, nor did anybody in that house. Dylan was given a polygraph test, which he failed. The questions were, did you kill Robert? And do you know who did?
That does not look good.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Dylans tend to be pretty all right people, in my experience. And in your experience.
Okay.
And failing those 2 questions on a polygraph.
It's given a bad name for Dylan's.
At the same time, polygraphs are not reliable.
They're not reliable. They're not admissible in court. So the only thing that they have is the leverage of bringing that information back to the interrogation room and hoping somebody spills.
Yeah.
But nobody did. They thought that one of them would crack and turn their backs on the other.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. Nothing. They all stuck to their story.
That's incredible.
Each of the men ended up leaving the detective's office, but Joe ended up going back after he was like, oh, the lead detective's there. I have something else I want to say. Like, he wanted to keep talking. So back in the interrogation room, he ended up changing his story for where the knife was. Originally, he said it was laying on Robert's chest, and he put it on the nightstand. The nightstand.
Nice.
On the nightstand.
Uh-huh.
He then changed his story to pulling the knife out of Robert's chest and putting it on the nightstand.
Okay. He pulled it out of his chest and then put it back in a few times.
Maybe.
That's such a weird detail to change.
It is. And that was the only one he changed. Now, I have to say, in the documentary, I thought it was very well done. I liked how they showed both sides of the arguments with a lot of these things. Basically, every single point the defense made, or the prosecution made, the defense had a rebuttal, and there was, like, you could see it going both ways. You could understand, like, damn, it could be both ways. It shows the detectives who are convinced that this is evidence, saying that Joe's lying. It shows his attorney who says that this shows that he's in shock and is telling the truth. It just shows how complicated the case is because you get both points and you agree with both. It could be both.
They found no evidence of an intruder?
None.
No footprints, no...
No footprints, no fingerprints.
No description of the intruder?
They didn't see him.
They didn't see him?
They didn't see him. They only saw Robert's body being stabbed. Not being stabbed. That was stabbed. They did not see or hear anyone, for that matter. They only heard the grunts coming from Robert.
You said there was a imprint in the pillow and that it was like a fresh bed, right? What I think is, like, if he gets stabbed how many times in the chest?
3.
If he's laying down on his back and somebody's on top of him and he's not able to move, I mean, that would explain why there are no other places that he was stabbed and why there's no struggle marks. If you put your knees on somebody's arms, they can't move.
That's true.
But at the same time, if that were the case, then there would be blood on the bed.
There'd be blood. There'd be signs of a struggle. There would be not a perfect crease in the bed.
You bring up this crease a lot. You're calling attention to the crease. What is with this crease?
The crease?
Yeah.
The crease in the bed? Okay, see the bed that I have made right back there. You know see how the blanket's folded over?
Yeah.
Take that blanket and fold it back like you're getting into it.
Okay.
Robert's body was just laying there.
On the bed.
On the bed.
With no blood.
A little bit on the sheet.
He was placed there, right?
That's what the investigators think.
Okay.
At this point, nobody knows all this information but the police. Kathy, his wife, and a good friend of Robert back home were under the impression that this was all a random violent crime until the detectives came to them asking about Robert's relationship with the men. That's when they kind of realized that, oh, they're looking at them. Shortly after, Joe pressed Kathy not only about what she had told the detectives, but the trio actually went over to Kathy's house and insisted on having a private meeting with her in the basement.
Oh, God.
Nobody knows what was said, but Kathy believed their story.
Okay.
So this is the intruder theory. I'm just going to walk you through the intruder theory as the trio is telling it.
Okay.
The intruder would have to catapult over the 7-foot fence, because there's no damage on the fence. There's no signs of a footprint. They would have had to avoid the dirt, the pollen, the cobwebs. There was a little tiny tree in a garden under the fence. They had to have missed that, not had any footprints in there. Go into the back door of the row house where the kitchen is. A butcher block. But let's not grab the big honkin' knife that's in the butcher block. Let's grab the small steak knife. I'm going to go up these very loud and creaky staircase, and bam, I'm right in front of Dylan's room. And now, I'm going to turn around 180 degrees to the opposite end of the hall where Robert is. I'm going to go in that room. But he doesn't kill him as soon as he walks into the door on the left side of Robert. And we know this because of the orientation of the stab wounds.
This is so unbelievable.
So he walks around the bed.
Yeah.
Passes up the table with the wallet and the expensive watch and all those nice things.
On the nightstand, yeah.
He goes to the other side of the bed and then inserts the knife into Robert's torso 3 times, leaving perfectly identical impressions. Either leaving the knife on the torso or within it. We don't know. The intruder then goes back around the staircase, past Dylan's room, down the creaky stairs, out the back door again, which he would then again have to leap over the fence, leaving no evidence of having been there.
So that didn't happen.
No. I would not say so. I would not say so. So the neighbors religiously watched a newscaster every night between 11 and 11:30. This is really helpful to setting up the timeline, so that's why I'm saying it, or else I wouldn't. But, so these neighbors would always watch the same newscaster between 11 and 11:30. This is when they heard the scream, sometime between 11 and 11:30, and that was the only scream that was heard. It came from Victor when he found the body, which aligns with his and Joe's story. However, the 911 call wasn't placed until 11:49 p.m., which means they waited somewhere between 19 and 49 minutes after they discovered the body to call 911.
19 to how many minutes?
19 to 49 minutes after they discovered the body. Because if what they're saying is true, and Victor's scream is whenever he came upon the body,
yeah.
Joe said that he told Victor to immediately call 911. We know that's not true because 911 wasn't called until 11:49.
So probably getting their story straight.
Probably cleaning up. Probably
yeah,
doing something. There's a lot of scrutiny about the 911 call as well.
Okay.
Victor asked at one point, "What time is it?" randomly. Like, in the middle of describing that his friend was being killed, he stopped and asked the 911 operator, "What time is it?" Like they were trying to align the timelines or something.
I see. Okay.
He also says the intruder has one of our knives, which feels a little strange in terms of the phrasing. He also keeps using the royal we. We talked, like we saw, They talked before picking up the phone. Now the autopsy.
Okay.
Again, I'm sorry that I keep giving long ones, but these are just fucking nuts. The first thing the medical examiner noticed during the autopsy was these 3 perfect slit-like defects on his front torso, the stabbing. These were 3 nearly identical surgical defects. It indicated that nobody moved, not the murderer or the victim. It was just perfect. There were no defensive wounds in the palms and hands, nothing on the forearms, no blood in his hands to grasp for it, which is very odd. That's not analyzing emotions. That's just human reaction and reflex. Like, if you're hurt, usually you grab for that part of your body.
Yeah, and the coroner said that he died of these?
Died of the stab wounds.
Of the stab wounds?
It was confirmed that he died of the stab wounds.
Okay. Is that what, my first thought is that he died of something else, and then they made it look like it was a stabbing.
We will get there. From the wounds, the examiner said that she would have expected significant blood loss, but again, very little blood found.
Mm-hmm.
She indicated the manner of death was homicide and the stab wounds were the cause of death. Even still, the stab wounds were not immediately fatal. Like you said, it takes a while to bleed out.
Yeah.
There was blood that had leaked into the intestine, and his digestive system continued to operate after he was stabbed because they found blood in there. So he was still alive when this blood clot was forming in his small intestine. So to have internal bleeding from a stab wound and not move, he had to have been paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't he move? He wasn't tied up. There was no evidence of ligature marks or bruises, no skin under his fingernails, no nothing. Unless, he was completely paralyzed.
Well, they could have injected him with something, but the coroner didn't find anything in his body?
So
like a paralyzing agent.
They did run a toxicology test. They tested for all of the traditional drugs that could cause paralysis. Nothing. It was clean.
Okay.
Absolutely clean. They didn't test for a common paralytic used in medical cases, but they couldn't, and they wouldn't have found it anyway because this natural paralytic breaks down naturally into the body into things that are naturally found within the body. It's called...
Two big Italian pinches.
It's called succinylcholine. Succinylcholine.
Okay.
It is undetectable after a period of time. That doesn't mean that it wasn't used, but it can't be proven that it was used.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan and Joe did have some other drugs at the scene that were not found in Robert. Ecstasy, maybe like cocaine. They were drug users. The crime scene. This is where things get even more batshit. You think they're crazy now? They found an extensive collection of BDSM equipment in Dylan's room.
Doesn't sound like a Dylan line.
And it was intense stuff. Not like a little leather outfit and a whip. Like, no. They were gas masks and floggers, metal spacer bars for limbs.
My God.
Restraints, metal gags.
Oh my God.
Everything you could possibly imagine. So then the police were thinking, is there a connection? Did Robert get forcibly raped? They did a rape kit for examination, and the medical examiner did find evidence that Wone had been sexually assaulted before his death.
Okay.
There was DNA around his genitals, and they found DNA inside of his rectum. But when they went to do the tests, it was his own DNA. It was his own semen.
Wow.
In his rectum and around his genitals.
Contortionist. What was that noise? How does that happen?
There were no DNA found in the sex toys. No, nothing. How does that happen is right. How does that happen?
None of this makes sense.
None of it makes sense, Dylan. So they ended up getting a warrant for the trio's computers and electronics. And they did find thousands of images of pornography. Something had made themselves. Nice.
Hell yeah.
Joe was in charge in the day-to-day, but it was very obvious that Dylan was in charge in the bedroom. Dylan was the dom. Joe was the sub. Their relationship, again, not just leather and whips. It was the extreme to torture and confinement. And so the police thought, how far could that go? Could Dylan kill somebody and make Joe stay silent with their dynamic?
Okay.
But
there's a third person in the dynamic.
It was mostly Joe and Dylan, from what they could see.
Gotcha.
Victor might have been involved, but I think Dylan was mostly for Joe.
I have a friend, Joe, who listens to this podcast.
Joe, you listening?
All right, please continue.
Listen up. The other thought is, was Robert a willing participant? But then again, there's no marks, no evidence, no DNA found on anything that Dylan had. Everyone insisted he was straight. All of his friends. Did something get out of hand? His wife, everybody who knew him insisted he was straight. Even the police said if he wasn't, or if there was inklings of doubt, they would have found something in his electronics records. They didn't find anything. He was happily married. He was seemingly as straight as can be. Additionally, he had his mouth guard in. His wife said that was the last thing he did every single night. So if it was willing, if it was intentional, why would you put your mouth guard in for that kind of behavior?
Kind of behavior.
I don't know. Why would you do that? So they ended up running into this dead end with the sexual assault theory.
Okay.
But then they focused their attention back on the blood. This is where things get even more messy.
I don't want to hear it.
They brought in cadaver dogs trained to find decaying skin and blood. They hit on the lint trap of the dryer and on the patio drain outside.
Okay.
They searched extensively for blood in the house, searching for blood that had been cleaned up already. Within the lint trap and the drain, the DNA evidence would have been unusable. Basically, when it gets diluted with the water and whatever else is in there, there's not enough of it to make a DNA sample. So that was a dead end for them.
Okay.
So now they're using Ashley's reagent, which is that spray that you use to detect whether you you spray it, you let it sit, and then it'll light up or it'll glow.
I've seen a lot of CSI.
Yeah. It's that stuff.
Okay.
So they ended up spraying that all over the house to find any trace of blood that had been cleaned up. And at first, it looked like it had hit all over the house. Everything was lighting up. It turns out the people who were using it didn't apply it correctly.
Oh, God.
And not only damaged the house to $250,000 worth of damage, but they also destroyed any potential evidence that might have been there. It wouldn't come off. It's not meant to be applied to vertical surfaces, and they just applied it everywhere. It's kind of like a dye pack that goes off when you rob a bank. So it's just staining everything. So within a week, they ripped up the carpets, dye bombed the entire place, took apart furniture, flooring, $250,000 worth of damage.
Jesus.
So now the knife. They don't find a trace of DNA or fingerprints that could point to anybody in the house on this knife. The forensic examiners said that the wounds also did not match the size of the knife. The blade was 5 inches in length, and the wound was only 4 inches. So you're telling me you just like stop an inch deep perfectly every time?
It depends on if he's hitting something, right?
It was different places.
Yeah.
Nothing to hit.
Except
for Robert's chest. There were also white cotton fibers consistent with the towel Joe claimed to have used to stop the bleeding. There was no blood on the cutting surface of the knife, like the sharp edge. It was only on like the sides of the knife. It looked like somebody had put blood on the towel and then smeared it on the knife. Also, the 3 cuts to Robert's gray shirt did correspond with where he was stabbed, but the knife didn't have any of those fibers on it. It was just the towel fibers. So then people think maybe it was a stage knife. Then they found a 3-piece cutlery set in Dylan's room, but the smaller knife was missing. The knife was much more consistent with the wounds on Robert. It was the same length, but they never found the missing knife.
Why do you have a cutlery set in his room?
That's a great question. It's a great question, Dylan. It's for his BDSM activities.
It's not BDSM.
So, gets crazier.
Okay.
The trio end up moving out of the Swan Street house. But then it was burglarized. But it wasn't reported by them to the police. Joe's lawyer ended up reporting it to the police that it had been burglarized. The charges were dropped because the culprit was Joe's brother Michael. And Michael stole $7,000 worth of electronics. And guess what? Turns out he had a key. Guess what else?
What? He
was studying to be a phlebotomist at the time, worked at Holy Cross Hospital, where he would have had access to the paralytic suckling chlorine. He would have had access to the paralytic. Okay. It's on every medical card. It's very common. But what connected him with the night of the murder? Like, what connected him there? He had perfect attendance in his classes until the night of the murder. It was the very first class he missed.
You got crazy eyes right now.
It's crazy. It gets crazier and crazier. They actually tracked his phone, and his phone was nowhere near the Swan Street house. But if you're going to rob a house, I also would not leave my phone to be tracked.
Right.
Or, sorry, if you're going to murder somebody. Sorry, we're talking about murder, not robbing. If you're going to murder somebody, I would not bring my phone to the place I'm going to murder somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Just, hot tip out there for you guys.
Here's a murder tip from Madison.
But then what was the motive? He didn't know him.
He knew about him, probably.
But then, why him? I don't know. So then 2 years later, no charges had been filed for 2 years.
Okay.
Because of this batshit craziness. The only evidence they had was circumstantial. Finally, Juan's trio of friends were charged with obstruction of justice, but they were acquitted in 2010 due to a lack of evidence. And the documentary goes in and out about this trial because it goes over all of these things and more. Essentially, the judge in her 43-minute sentencing, it was like 37 pages long. Essentially, this judge, for 43 minutes, laid into the characters of these 3 men. She agreed that the trio's story was bullshit and they were hiding something. But essentially, she said that while emotionally and morally there was an obstruction of justice, evidentiary, it couldn't be proven. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That yes, while we all can tell something is suspicious is happening, they have to know more. The evidence isn't there to prove it. So she cleared them of all charges. The defense attorney within this trial was able to prove that you could reach into their mail slot in their door and unopen the door from the outside.
Reach into their mail slot?
Mm-hmm. They're doing a lot of reaching into each other's mail slots. But this one in particular,
okay,
anyone could reach into their mail slot.
Anyone,
and unlock the door,
God
the front
forbid.
door. The defense attorney also showed how someone could easily vault over the fence, not needing superhuman strength. It was actually quite easy whenever he did it. A neighbor also said that she found footprints in her kid's sandbox as if someone landed on it. And the day after the murder, she actually went over to tell the detectives this, and they said that they had already had their people the next day. The medical examiner said that from the blood that she measured in Robert's body, there was only a third left. And the defense attorney said that, oh, where'd the blood go? He actually bled out internally. That's where the blood went. It's inside of him still.
Where blood's supposed to be.
Right? But he was missing 2/3 of his blood somehow still.
So I think, I know we're not at the end of this yet.
Mm-hmm. Almost. We're very close. Do you want to wait like 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan's mom. What's your mom's name?
Please don't. I already hate that my name's being used in this case.
I didn't even realize that, honestly.
Oh, I realized it the whole time.
I did not even realize it. Dylan's mom actually came to testify.
No, she didn't.
That she mailed her son the knife set, but she kept that missing knife for herself.
Why?
I don't know.
This is so confusing.
It is. It was also, for this case, it was unprecedented to charge somebody with obstruction of justice when there was no evidence as to who the murderer was. Like, again, this was not a murder trial. This was simply an obstruction of justice case. And no murder charges have been set to this day. Up until the affidavit was released during the trial, nobody knew all of these salacious details. This absolutely shifted public opinion from empathetic to accusatory. Kathy no longer stands by the trio. A lot of the stuff in the affidavit was very... Somebody described it as like being written like a horror movie. Like it was very much like they were really trying to sway public opinion with this. They were also bringing up all of the salacious gossip with the trio and like all of those things, which could potentially have proven something, but also didn't really because they weren't on trial for murder. They were on trial for obstruction of justice. So it brought all these things to light that just kind of painted them in a bad light and manipulated public opinion. But anyway, they did later end up settling a wrongful death suit filed by Catherine, Robert's wife. To date, nobody has been charged with Wone's murder. That's the story of the murder of Robert Wone. It's the most notorious DC case in history.
I feel like I've just aged a year. I'm going to be turning 31 this year. 31. Not 30 anymore.
31.
Nice.
So,
no, well,
all that.
The phlebotomist did it.
The phlebotomist did it.
And the three guys in the house obscured the evidence to make things more confusing for the police.
I will say, at the very end of the docuseries, Joe's lawyer, who was very much on his side the entire time, the producers were like, okay, cut and dry. If you had to say who did it, who would you say? And the lawyer said, if you put a gun to my head and said, you need to tell me who your best guess is, he guessed Dylan. Despite swearing up and down that it wasn't them. If he had a best guess, he thinks it would be Dylan. I would have to agree that I'm on the side that it was Dylan. The knife being missing is too suspicious.
I didn't do it.
That's Dylan. Don't listen to him, guys.
I didn't do it. I swear to God.
Don't listen. I think that
I'm listening.
With all the things that he was into and the extent that he was into them, like it was pretty extreme stuff. I've seen crazier things. Like I could see Dylan maybe wanting to get a little bit of adventurous and getting a paralytic either from the deep web or maybe from Michael, Joe's brother himself. Maybe he got the paralytic and just for funsies and was like, maybe Robert gave him a look. I don't know.
Yeah, do you think it's Dylan?
He's my best guess, but I also still don't know. He's my best guess in terms of like the logistics. with he was right there. So the way that the townhouse also works, which I'll put a picture somewhere, but you have it's a row house. So there's multiple floors. So it's tall, but it's thin. So you have the main floor. You walk into the living room, the kitchen's in the back. You go up the stairs, and that first set of stairs, we have Dylan's room immediately on the set of the stairs, and then you go around the staircase, and there's Robert's room. You keep going around, and there's another staircase, and that's where Victor and Joe have their bedrooms. Yeah. So it's like a 3-story house, essentially.
Okay.
So Dylan's saying that he didn't hear any noises, and he just heard, Victor scream, and that's what woke him up. But from upstairs, they heard the chime of the downstairs back door, from what they said. They heard grunts and almost screams, and they came down the stairs to see Robert. So Dylan was unaccounted for. His alibi could not be proven because nobody saw him.
I mean, I still think it's the phlebotomist because, this man was like 2/3 insanguinated, right? He had like 2/3 of his blood just sucked from his body from like surgical precisions.
Yeah.
Where'd it go?
I don't know. That's why. So that's the other thing.
Like who would know how to do that except a medical doctor or like somebody in the medical community?
Yeah.
Who also had access to a paralytic that wasn't tested for.
But then why?
I don't know, but I think probably the 3 of the guys are complicit in some way, if only by covering up the evidence and obscuring things by making it especially confusing for the police, which they were successful in.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's, we just went through the case. It's very hard to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm. But then there's so much. Because then my first thought is he had to, I think the shower. Like he had to have been stabbed in the shower because it would have gone down the drain. It could have been cleaned up. Had they not destroyed the evidence with the Ashley's reactant or reagent or whatever the hell it is, maybe we could have found something there, but we can't now. We can't. It was destroyed.
Well, does somebody who puts a mouth guard in typically do it before a shower or after when they're about to go to bed?
After it. Before he goes to bed. It was the last thing he did before he went to bed, his wife said, every night.
So after a shower?
After a shower.
So it's unlikely that he was stabbed in the shower, right?
Unless he was paralyzed in his sleep, injected with something, taken to the shower to stab him.
Oh, I see.
And then showered him and tucked him back into bed.
Wow.
But why? I guess to clean it up.
Yeah. They didn't test the shower drain?
They couldn't. They couldn't test the shower drain because of, like I said, the patio drain. When the water's mixed in with it, you can't really get a valuable DNA sample. They were trying to test the shower, and they fucked it up. And the other thing, Robert was assaulted, or there was stuff on him. His own stuff on him.
Oh, yeah.
In him. How does that get there?
You said traces of his DNA, right?
It was semen. Okay. It was.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. The defense attorney, this is kind of fucked up. The defense attorney said that you cannot produce that substance if you are not into it. But that is not true. Men can be raped. That can happen.
Yeah, that's very incorrect.
Yes. So that was thrown out there as well, but that we know that's not correct. So it could be both ways. That does not confirm it. Could it have been of his own volition? Could it have been somebody else? We don't know. I don't know.
Could a phlebotomist?
Could a phlebotomist?
Do you know where I'm going with this?
I don't.
I don't know if I want to say this. Could a phlebotomist use implements to draw that substance from a person's body?
I don't know. But why? Why would you do that?
That same person murdered a man. So
but there were no needle marks there. They searched his entire body for needle marks, and they found multiple needle marks all over his body. That was another thing I forgot to mention.
They found needle marks on his body.
They found multiple needle marks all over his body, which is somewhat normal because usually whenever someone's transported into the ambulance in the hospital, you're trying to stick an IV line in there. But this was in like multiple places also where you wouldn't traditionally stick an IV line, like ankle, foot, multiple on his chest, arms. Arms make sense, but like all over his body.
So he's a drug user.
He wasn't, though. There were no drugs in his body. And they were all fresh.
Oh, I see. So, it kind of lends credence to the idea of the phlebotomy killer.
It does. It lends credence to that, but then why?
There's probably some history or information that we don't have.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't like that theory. Because it doesn't satisfy, it doesn't answer all my questions. The Dylan one answers most of my questions, but even then it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of the people in the house are complicit in some way.
Oh, absolutely. They're all complicit in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was Michael, Joe's brother, and they were covering for him, whether they were covering for one of each other and they were in too deep, and if they had gone back, they would absolutely go to jail for obstruction of justice. Like there's no way they can break now. They've changed their names. They've moved. Won't give any more comments.
I can tell this is very upsetting.
It is. It's so upsetting. I don't know what happened, and it's so confusing.
I don't know what happened.
Susan!
I'll have to consult with the Council of Dylans.
Council of Dylans.
And get to the bottom of this. Definitely one of the more interesting stories, and there's just all of it's all over the place.
It's all over the place.
It's so confusing to follow.
It is confusing to follow. And 79 minutes. It happened in 79 minutes. We know.
Holy shit. I believe you.
Are you just like drugging him as soon as he gets there? What the fuck?
Well, I mean, that's a possibility. It would explain why he wasn't able to fight back.
Yeah,
or why he didn't fight back.
He had to have been paralyzed. There's no other explanation for it. He could not have been tied up. There was no ligature marks. He had to have been unconscious in some way, shape, or form that would have paralyzed him that he couldn't wake up from.
Maybe he gets to the house, everything's fine. He takes a shower, goes to bed. Somebody paralyzes him, and then fucks around with his body.
Yeah.
And then kills him.
Yeah. That's the only explanation.
Yeah.
But then where's the blood?
It might have been like...
I don't think you know how phlebotomy works.
You are correct.
I don't think you know how that works.
I don't.
You can't suck 2/3 of somebody's blood out of their body with a tiny needle.
Jesus, I don't know.
I'm just saying. I'm hysterical.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So where does that's how the story concludes.
That's how it concludes. They changed their names. Dylan and Victor are going by different last names. They live in Florida now. Dylan has left the trio and he is married to somebody else. He's a Pilates instructor. That's all. Robert, there's been multiple memorial funds and scholarships set up in Robert's name, which is lovely, but no justice.
I'm at a loss. It seems like everyone in the story is guilty.
Yeah.
Except for
Robert.
Yeah, except for Robert.
But yeah, so that's the story of the murder of Robert Wone.
Thank you for bringing that.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry it upset you so much.
No, it's okay. It just sent me to a well, first with the willow chip and then with this. I'm spiraling all over the place. Hopefully it was easy to follow as much as it could be with all the craziness.
Yeah, you explained it well, but it seemed like somebody who involved in that whole thing was obscuring the evidence purposefully to confuse people.
It had to have been. That's why people think the knife was planted. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
And it probably never will.
No, it won't. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. And thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, folks.
You can follow us at Emmy Crisis Pod.
Crisis Pod.
Instagram and Facebook. You can send us an email at myexistentialcrisispodcast@gmail.com. Dylan, where can they find you?
Marble Folk.
And you can find me at Madison Epley.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
Bye.